Geographically, where the poo comes out is near where you pee, and the bacteria can move. Because women have a short urethra, it's easy for bacteria to migrate into the bladder of a woman, much easier than a man. Okay, external genitalia, the external ear canal, external island. So all of these were sites that we knew. So maybe I should frame this. When I took microbiology in the 1980s, this is what we talked about. We've just come to realize in the last few years, really, that there's a lot of other parts of the body that have a lot of bacteria on them. And so we have found a lot of these bacteria by looking for DNA and realizing now that there are actually some bacteria that live deep in your lungs. There are more bacteria than we thought that are just sort of normally present in the bladder and in your urine. The breast milk contains bacteria. So when you breastfeed your baby, you're giving them some bacteria too, which is bacteria they need, right? We expect. The amniotic fluid in fetus are not as sterile as we once thought, although they're still fairly sterile compared to your gut, for example, but there are some bacteria. And we have detected some DNA from microbes in the brain and even in the bloodstream. So we know now that even though this is where the major amounts of bacteria are, it's actually not uncommon to find bacteria all through the body at low levels. When we talk about your relationship with microbes, we think of them in three different ways. I believe we've talked about this before, but we'll sort of formalize our definitions right now. You know that most microbes that get in you and on you are actually destroyed by your host defenses. And we're going to talk about host defenses, that's what the immune system is. But some microbes actually have co-evolved to colonize your body and live with you, in you, on you, as a community. And unless you take something like antibiotics and kill them off, they're just going to stay there and keep dividing. And you're going to have this relationship where you never get out of control as long as you're alive because your immune system won't let them. But they're living there, growing, and they're benefiting from you, and you're, in many cases, benefiting from them. And so depending on how this relationship works, we can refer to them as a commensal, a mutualist, or a parasite. So this is kind of a cute example of each. So a dog with fleas, the fleas are, is a dog benefiting from the fleas? No. Is the dog being harmed from the fleas?
Yes.
It is. Is a flea benefiting?
Yes.
Oh yeah, fleas in heaven. So it's a parasitic relationship. One organism is harmed, the other one benefits. A bee that flies from flower to flower, does the flower benefit?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does the bee benefit?
Yes.
So that's a mutual relationship. It's mutually beneficial. The example in this little diagram is a clownfish hiding in a sea anemone, and the idea here is that the clownfish benefits and the sea anemone is just hanging. There's actually some evidence that it's good for the sea anemone. It's actually sort of difficult to find simple relationships where one partner doesn't benefit. A lot of these relationships really do involve benefit on both sides. But the definition is that at commensalism, one of the species receives a benefit, the other one's not affected. But what you see mostly in the human body are these relationships here where both organisms receive benefit or occasionally one of the species is harmed. When we were talking about C. difficile, one of the things that we said was that people were much more prone to getting a C. diff infection if they've been taking antibiotics. What do antibiotics do to all your gut bacteria? They kill off these mutualistic bacteria and commensal bacteria, right? And they leave all this empty real estate. It's like vacancy signs going up. And the C. diff says, hey, I need a place to stay, right? And so it can colonize the gut at that point. The role that these organisms that are naturally present in your body, the microbiome, one of the roles that they play is referred to as microbial antagonism. And this is the idea where you don't have to fight off bad guys because the bacteria in your gut are already doing it. So the good bacteria in your GI tract are fighting off C. diff most of the time. They're antagonizing the C. diff. You don't have to do anything. You simply have to feed them, and then they prevent you from getting C. diff unless you take antibiotics and kill them off. Does that make sense? So microbial antagonism is an important term to know. Another term that we've used over the semester is something called opportunistic pathogens. So there are bacteria that are commensals and mutuals, commensal and mutualistic relationships with you, that are not pathogenic under normal conditions, but could become pathogenic if the opportunity came up. So for example, if you get really sick with another illness and your immune system can't maintain the normal relationship with the, this mutual or commensal organism, maybe that bacteria can start to overgrow and make you sick. A classic example of an opportunistic infection are getting a staph infection because you get a cut. And normally the staph's on your skin and it's not hurting you and there normally, but if you get a cut, it now has an opportunity to get in there and do harm. Okay, so some of these bugs that are normally okay can become pathogens if they have the right opportunity. Lots of terminology today. Okay, not hard concepts though. Okay, this is cute.
Oh, yo.
This is great. Giant tarantulas keep tiny frogs as pets. Insects will eat the burrowing tarantula's eggs, so the spiders protect the frogs from predators, and in return the frogs eat the insects.
Yo.
Is that cool or what?
Badass.
You can't make this stuff up, man. It's a cute frog. Matt Schweitzer would tell you it's a cute spider.
It is.
Temperature index. It doesn't work for me the way it works for him. On my screen is sufficient for the whole semester. All right, I'm gonna let you click in. All right, and 88% of you saying it's a mutualistic relationship. A few of you said parasitic. Now, in a parasitic relationship, one of these organisms would be harmed, right? Do you see that neither are? The spider is protecting the frog, and the frog is protecting the spider. So they both benefit. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. All right. So it's one of the study guide questions that I have in here is just explain what microbial antagonism is. So what's microbial antagonism? Someone want to volunteer? In the back, I volunteered you. Microbial antagonism.
Bacteria that are harmful to humans and antagonize them.
So the bacteria that are in your body,
In our body.
that are good for you, antagonize the harmful bacteria. You actually had it like 80%. Does that make sense? Okay, so microbial antagonism is this concept that when you have good bacteria in your body, that those bacteria are going to antagonize bad bacteria and prevent them from growing.
Ah.
So did you ever have a sibling that antagonized you?
Yeah.
Like that, except for you're the good bacteria. Oh, wait. You have to pick the sibling you antagonized. Did you ever have a sibling you tortured? Okay, that's more fun. So they're the bad bacteria, you're the good bacteria.
The fecal transplant for C. diff is the example for the microbial.
So any example. So the idea that someone who doesn't take antibiotics doesn't get C. diff because the good microbes are antagonizing the C. diff. Or you could refer to it the other way around. C. diff doesn't take hold unless you get rid of the microbes that normally antagonize it. That would certainly be an excellent example. There are multitudes of examples and lots of little ones in terms of the GI tract in particular, because there's so many bacteria there, where we think that having a healthy gut microbiome, that many of those bacteria prevent. Because you eat all sorts of nasty things without realizing it. Most of us just don't cause a problem because of the good fact that you have all these good bacteria in your gut. Okay. All right, so colonization of the newborn. So this has been in the news a lot lately. I sent you guys that baptism article. Did you guys look at that? What they say, bacterial baptism, right? So how do we think that you get your great microbiome? Well, most people, not all, are born through their mom's vagina. And the main mechanism is actually the bacteria that are in the vagina that coat the baby that's being born. There was a professor from UCSF who gave a talk a couple years ago, and someone was asking, well, where does bacteria come from? And she did this, she went. We all cracked up. So that's the main mechanism. Is for those of us who've had children, it is not a smooth glide out, A baby really, it gets shoved, the bacteria get in their nose, and they really get a good coating of bacteria. And it's gotten to the point now where people are starting to think that's actually really important for baby's health. that the idea of bacteria, or that are good bacteria antagonizing bad bacteria, that you want all these good bacteria that we've evolved with, they're going to help the baby develop their immune system normally. Some of the lactobacillus that colonize help the baby digest mom's milk. Turns out these bacteria are super important to their health, and so that's why people are beginning to do clinical trials now where they say, hey, mom, you know, we don't want you to die of childbirth, because that's not good either. You know, better not to have a microbiome, but maybe we can have the best of both worlds. Maybe we can give you a C-section and get that baby out safely, and swab the vagina right prior to birth, and then use that to swab the baby and really coat it with your microbes, so that that baby, even though it was born by C-section, gets the benefit of mom's microbiome. So right now, clinical trials are being done, and that's what that article was about. So it's been really interesting to see if some of the, you know, we've had concerns for a while about particularly immune development. Children who are born by C-section have to be more prone to things like asthma, maybe getting cold more frequently, maybe their immune system's not quite as tough. And maybe we can sort of prevent some of the disadvantages of being born by C-section. All right, so this is a picture of a baby, and it kind of talks about the various bacteria. When you look at a baby that's been born by C-section, and you look at its microbiome in the early stages of life compared to a baby born by through the vagina, the bacteria are different. So a baby that's born vaginally is going to have primarily vaginal microbes that begin colonizing it. And a baby that's born by C-section tends to have mom's skin microbes, because those are the first bugs that it gets connected to. It begins to breastfeed, it's connecting to mom's skin, it's going to be colonized initially with mom's skin microbes. Lots of babies are born by C-section, which is great. It's not a terrible thing. But it's an interesting observation that maybe we can have both of those things. All right, so what makes your microbiome similar to another microbiome? This isn't really a big area of active research, but we do know that people who live together in the same house tend to have similar microbiomes. Probably I'm not surprised, they're sharing food, they're touching countertops, they're touching their mouths, so the bacteria that are in that environment locally are going to be the bacteria that everybody shares. So for example, you might not be related, I hope, to the person that you're married to or having sex with. Better not to be related for lots of reasons. But you may still share a really common microbiome with them because you're sharing habitats, right? And your children will share a microbiome too. I have been watching all these videos, I don't know why, on the history of the royal family starting, in Europe. Starting from the 1500s up to Henry VIII, but it's really amazing how many people who are really closely related were reproducing, and how bad that was over time. Okay. And then there's that new show. What's it called? The Romanovs, right? About the Russian, the last Tsar. Which is so the show is silly. It's good. Silly, but it's on Amazon. But that story is actually super interesting, and you can find great YouTube videos that go through the story of the Russian family and the Bolshevik Revolution. And I guess I should take a history class. Anyway, all right. Well, this is a little dry, so we need a little levity. All right, I think we've. Actually, there was one thing I did want to mention of, which is that your microbiome changes as you get older. One of the things that we do see with babies is that so they're really different initially. C-section babies, vaginal babies, and then over time, a lot of the common microbes tend to eventually colonize those children anyway. The problem is that there are some key times in immune development that you want to have those particular sets of microbes in your body by the time a developmental process is happening with the immune system. And so even though maybe as an adult these two people had the same microbiome, because they had different ones at critical stages of immune development, they may still have immune differences as a result. So there's still really good reasons for getting babies to have a good healthy microbiome early on. Okay. So the microbiome is a really important part of thinking about our relationship with microbes. This is interesting. I see people go back and forth all the time. They've done these studies in mice, and whether or not there's relevant data in humans is a little iffy. The video that I showed you last time kind of made reference to this. But they have been able to do this in mice. They take a mouse that tends to be insulin resistant and struggling with having a healthy metabolism, losing weight, and they take those gut microbes and transfer transfer them to a mouse, they treat them with antibiotics first and clear out the microbes they do, and they do sort of a fecal transplant, right? And so you can make a thin mouse obese, and you can make an obese mouse thin by simply shifting the microbiome of the mice. So there's a lot of research being done here. And I've seen some criticisms of these studies. It seems to be persisting in the literature a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see down the road if that seems to really bear fruit. I've said this already, but I just wanted to mention it one more time. Exposure to microbes is necessary for normal immune system development. So as we move on and talk about the immune system next time, and talk about how it's supposed to work, you want to be thinking about the fact that it turns out that your immune system has to be able to tell who's the bad guys and who are the good guys. And one of the ways it does that is it has to be trained early on in development by the microbes that are in your body. It turns out that it's really important that it gets trained. And if you take a mouse, for example, and you get rid of all of its bacteria, and then you try to raise it, it ends up with a massively messed up immune system. So we see this a little bit in humans. There's something called the hygiene hypothesis. Have you heard of the hygiene hypothesis? So if you go to a place like Sub-Saharan Africa, where there's very little medical care in general, and it's a really tough place to be because people die of infectious disease all the time, what you don't see are people with lots of autoimmune disease and allergies. So they've traded, with hygiene and keeping our environment really sanitary, we traded one problem for another. Now, it's not good when lots of children are dying of infectious diseases before they're 5. So there are some really nice, important things about sanitation that keep lots of people alive and make quality of life lots better. But we have sanitized ourselves into potentially having our immune systems not developing as they should be. And so it's possible that some of the autoimmune diseases that we see are the result of this. So this is just kind of just showing this idea here. I should find a better picture. So there are genes involved, and then there's the environment. And so they're just kind of looking at large family size, rural homes, low antibiotic use, poor sanitation. So you have very little allergic disorders. So these that's not allergic. And then allergic disorders are, you see these associated with small family size, affluent urban homes, high antibiotic use, low or absent helminth burden. That means people don't suffer from worms. Helminths are worms. So there have been people with really severe autoimmune diseases that have actually tried infecting themselves with worms to see whether or not that would cure it. Those are anecdotal, they're not clinically clinical studies, but what I think is I'm not capturing well with these slides is just how awful some of these autoimmune diseases are. And so we have something to learn from this in terms of keeping people healthy. We want both people to not die of infectious disease, but also not suffer with immune problems. Okay, a little clicker to take a break here. All right, last chance to click in. All right, I like how you guys have answered this. So both A and B. We don't want our resident microbiota to be pathogens. Usually those are not normal bacteria if they're pathogenic. An opportunistic pathogen might be, but a primary pathogen shouldn't be part of our resident microbiome. All right, pick the best answer here. C. diff is a primary Hold on. All right, last chance to click in. follicles. And then we have a little bit, so intestines absolutely have a ton of resident microbiome. That's actually where most of your bacteria are, is in your intestines. Hair follicles also have lots of bacteria. They're basically external. The best answer here is the heart, because it's completely inside you, right? The pharynx is still going to get a lot of exposure to outside material. Jill, I know you had a question about why C. diff wouldn't be, this is the prior question, right? So let's go back. So C. diff is not a normal resident microbe. It's not normally there. You may have spores that are there that pass through you, but they usually don't set up shop and start growing unless there's an absence of microbial antagonism.
I thought you were saying microbial antagonism. So they were always there.
No, so your good bugs are always there, hopefully, and they're going to prevent bad bugs from taking a foothold. That doesn't mean they're not passing through transiently, but the goal of microbial antagonism is that the good bacteria are going to prevent those transients from setting up shop. Okay. There was another question.
Yeah, for the second quick question.
Here.
So it says absent from.
So missing from, not there.
So it's, what was the correct answer?
So the correct answer is the heart. Really, we have found bacterial DNA everywhere in the body now. But you're less likely to find, if you have bacteria colonizing your heart, that's usually an infection. In your pharynx, because you're eating food all the time, and some of that, just having things go down the wrong tube a little bit, right? The pharynx is the air is going in your lungs. It's going to have spores, and it's going to have bacteria. Anything you're breathing in is good. So that's going to have bacteria. But so there's a best answer here, though. Because you could define as a resident, as a the colony. So, the best answer is heart. But it's not, this isn't a perfect question. Although sometimes when they're not perfect, you can talk about the one they're more interested in. More questions? Okay. All right, so we talked about this a little bit already. In what ways might a child born by a C-section differ from a child born vaginally?
Skin microbes.
So, someone in the back. I'll pick on another person. Okay, so let's do the first part. What ways might a child born via C-section differ from a child born vaginally?
Vaginal is the primary vaginal microbes, whereas C-section is the mom's skin microbes.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, so and then someone else, I want to answer, so that was in relation to microbiomes. How is it going to relate in terms of their health? A child born C-section versus a vaginal birth, how might their health be different? Amos.
So children born through C-section might be susceptible to diabetes and other diseases.
There may be diseases that we think the microbiome helps protect us against that they're more susceptible with. I think that's a good answer. I'm thinking of one other one that we could talk about too. Anyone else want to volunteer?
They'll receive the bacteria like lactobacillus that will help them break down.
That's true too, so they'll be able to digest mom's milk better. And I'm thinking of one other thing we just talked about. No mind readers here?
Were we talking about allergens?
We were talking about allergies. So the immune system, the effect of having the vaginal microbiome might be beneficial for the immune system. All right. So that's enough on the microbiome. We could have a whole semester class on the microbiome. We're learning more and more about it. It's something to think about down the road. But for now, we're going to focus on pathogens because this is actually really the thing that's going to impact you the most in terms of going on to your careers in allied health fields. So a pathogen, just to sort of define the term, we use the word a lot, has a parasitic relationship with you. Some pathogens are opportunistic, so they live in you and on you, not as parasites until suddenly they have an opportunity to get in you and cause an infection. And then there are primary pathogens, and these cause disease in healthy people with normal immune systems. One thing that's important to know is that it takes a certain number of microbes usually to make you sick. We talk about an infectious dose. Usually one bacterium doesn't make you sick no matter how nasty it is. But it's when you get lots of bacteria, right, so shiny. When you get enough of them though, enough of a dose of a pathogen, and it's different for different pathogens, that's when they're going to be able to overwhelm your immune system and develop the potential to cause disease. So infectious disease is when you have a pathogen that makes you sick. There are lots of non-infectious diseases. So diabetes, we were just talking about, that's a non-infectious disease. Cardiovascular disease, where you have a heart attack because you have a blockage in your arteries, or a stroke, that's a non-infectious disease. Cancer, in most cases, although not all, is a non-infectious disease. HPV actually is the cause of cancer, so in that case it would be the result of an infectious disease. But most of the cancers that we think about from day to day are just the result of your own cells misbehaving, not from a bacterium or a virus that you sick. All right, so I wanted to make that differentiation on this slide between an infectious disease and a non-infectious disease, because as healthcare providers, you'll deal with people with both kinds of disease. You don't worry about catching cancer, right? You do worry about catching a cold. Oh, my husband has a bad cold right now, and he's really super cranky, but he's also just staying away. Yes. What's our anniversary too on Sunday? I'm like, no.
Question about the HPV, because it's a virus that causes the cancer. If you were to somehow remove the virus, would you then remove the cancer, or does it work that way?
Tangentially, HPV, because we'll talk about it more later on, HPV has proteins that make your cells divide more than they should. If you have removed the virus, you often can cure the cancer, but you have to remove the cells that are now abnormal. And sometimes what happens is by the time you know that there's a problem, those cells have continued to grow unchecked and it's too difficult, or the cells are too ingrained in your body. Sometimes they've metastasized to other locations. Yeah. So HPV is very curable early on, and that said, lots of women all over the world die of cervical cancer every year, just not so many in the US. And it causes oral pharyngeal cancers too, because people have oral sex and they get HPV in their throat and their pharynx. Okay. So, but you can get a vaccine for HPV. Remember I told you the other day you can get to your 45? No excuses, because you might are young. She's really frustrated. All right, infectious disease. All right, so let's keep going here. They just give up on you at some point if you're people are far too old to be having sex. No point past.
That's not true.
All right. Or maybe it's just that you're so old that even if you are having sex, it'll take too many years for it to catch up to you and make you sick. Maybe that's it. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some good legitimate medical reason. But the vote of non-confidence bothers me. All right. Virulence. So we're talking about pathogens. Virulence refers to the degree of pathogenicity. So different organisms are more or less virulent than other organisms. And there are things that contribute to virulence. So one thing is how well the pathogen can establish it in the host. And then how much damage does it do when it gets in you. So these are both important in terms of how sick they make you. Any characteristic or structure that contributes to these two activities is a virulence factor. And so what we want to do now is we want to talk about the process of an infection, and then along the way we'll talk about the different things that impact that process that we call virulence factors. Really, we're just thinking about ways that you get sick from bacteria and how sick you get. In order to make you sick, a bacteria has to be able to do these 5 things. It has to find a way to get in. It has to attach to you, and then it has to survive your immune system so that it can divide and colonize you and then begin to damage you in some way. And then, if it's a successful pathogen, you have to share it with other people. Does this make sense? So it's got to get in, it's got to stick, it's got to survive your immune system, it's got to do some damage and make you sick, and then they have to get you to share it with other people. Those are the 5 steps in an infectious disease process. So what we're going to do now is talk about each step by step. So the first one is entry. And we talk about portals of entry. So skin is a portal of entry. Usually your skin does a pretty good job keeping the bad guys out. We talk about it being the first line of defense against infectious disease. It's dry, it's salty. It's covered with dead cells. If you take a shower, your skin doesn't melt off and wash away. It stays there. It's waterproof. Skin's really important stuff. If you get a burn and you burn off a bunch of skin, the thing we worry most about is infection, because you have damaged that shield, really, against bacteria. in the external world. But if the skin has a break in it, that's when you can get an infection or bacteria can take hold. You also have mucous membranes. So unfortunately, remember we said in order for humans to reproduce, they have to both eat, that involves putting things in your body, and then of course reproducing involves putting things in your body, at least the way we've evolved to do it, right? So both things can introduce bacteria into your system. And so we have skin, we have mucous membranes, your nose, your GI tract, vagina, and then the parenteral route is, breathing, lungs, right? And then the parenteral route is the idea that if you get cut, the bacteria can get in, or if you get burned, things can get in. Okay? So this is just a list of the different ways bacteria get in, your genital, respiratory, gastrointestinal, skin, and then some of the kinds of organisms that use those routes to get into you. All right, so step one, it has to get into you. Step two, it has to attach to you somehow. It's got to stick. You can't just slide off, right? It's got to actually attach to your tissue. Adherence is the result of interactions between microbes and host cells. So you're a host, you have cells, and the microbe has to stick to those cells. So the microbe may have fimbriae, little structures that help it attach. It might have adhesions or ligands, proteins that allow it to attach. It might have capsules, so those polysaccharides that allow it to stick to you. There's got a whole bunch of flavors of mechanisms that it can attach to your cells, and then once it's stuck there, it can begin to divide and colonize your body. So the microbe has these adhesions, ligands, fimbriae, surface proteins, slimes, etc. And then you have, as a host, you have receptors. So the ligand, for example, on the organism might bind to the host cell receptor. So it's recognizing a bacteria that infects your gut wouldn't necessarily infect your skin, for example. All right, so it's going to bind specific types of cells in specific areas of your body. Don't forget that bacteria bind nicely to each other via biofilms. So once one bacteria is there, they can often, they don't all need to bind to your cells. They just need to get a foothold, and then they can colonize by sticking to each other and forming this biofilm. All right, step one, it's got to get in. Step two, it's got to stick to you. Step three, it's got to avoid your immune system. Once your immune system goes after it, it's in trouble. And so this is why bacteria often have capsules or slime layers. This prevents those macrophages and dendritic cells from being able to gobble it up and break it down into pieces, which is going to be the topic of our innate immune system lecture. Some bacteria can kill phagocytic cells. So they're basically weaponized bacteria that as soon as your immune system gobbles it up, it destroys them from within. It's very sinister. Right? And some bacteria can survive inside the phagocytes. So they've evolved to take advantage of the immune system. They get phagocytized and they say, that's exactly what I wanted. Now I'm ready to go on with my life cycle. And they'll grow and divide, like Mycobacterium tuberculosis. They'll go and divide inside the macrophage. Right? Make sense? So I've got a few